everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. But before we do, I do want to get to one very interesting piece of college football news outside of the college football playoff, and that is a very interesting update out of the transfer portal. Now, to be clear, transfer portal stuff is mostly done. The portal is technically closed. Now, players who played in the college football playoff or the New Year's Six do have a couple extra days, but for the most part, the comings and goings are basically done. Players that want to transfer, most of them hit the portal weeks ago. You obviously want to be committed by now. You want to find your spot. You want to get to campus. A lot of schools are starting up their spring semester here within the next few days if they have not started already. So again, all this stuff has largely died down. With that said, as I just said a moment ago, players who played in the New Year's Six or college football playoff do have a couple extra days. And on Thursday, we got a bombshell of all bombshells as far as the transfer portal is concerned, as Ole Miss running back Quinshon Judkins decided, or at least announced, that he is planning on entering the transfer portal. And this is huge for two very simple reasons. One, he just might be the best player that has entered the portal. But two, I think if you pay close enough attention, there is something very interesting going on over here. First of all, for people who don't follow, watch college football 365, maybe you follow your team, whatever. As I just said, Quinshon Judkins might be the best player in the portal this cycle. This was a kid that, as a true freshman last year at Ole Miss, rushed for 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns. This year as a sophomore, only 1,100 yards and 15 touchdowns. But what's crazy, I saw this stat. He is the first SEC running back since Herschel Walker to go for over 2,500 yards in his first two seasons in the SEC. Whenever you as a college football player are being mentioned with Herschel Walker, you're darn good. And this kid is no exception. He is that kind of difference maker for Lane Kiffin in this offense. More importantly, not just that he's good, here is also why this is a very significant piece of transfer portal news. It's because Ole Miss is going to be really good next year. And we've talked about this a lot. But you look at the fact that this is a team that just won 11 games this season, if you include the Peach Bowl, 10 in the regular season. This is a team that returns Jackson Dart, its star quarterback. They have crushed the portal. Tyler Barron, Walter Nolan from Texas A&M. Oh, by the way, Trey Harris, their star wide receiver, is coming back. This is a team, I'm not kidding you. I am starting to put together the preseason way too early top 25. This is a definitive top 10 team on paper, especially with Quinshon Judkins. So the question becomes, why would he leave? You're really good. You're really talented. Your team is about to be really good next year. Well, I'll be blunt. There's one reason, and one reason only, that I can think of, that I believe that he has at least floated, whispers, mentioned that he plans on entering the transfer portal. I think he's trying to get some more NIL money. This is essentially, I don't know if it's the first one, but this is essentially an NFL contract holdout I think we're seeing in real time. And I think this kid wants more money from Ole Miss. And I'll be blunt, I don't blame him. This is the new world of college football. We have to accept it. The question now becomes, Torres, why are you so confident? How are you just going to besmirch a kid's name and just assume that he wants money? Well, it's very simple. There's a bunch of reasons why. Think about just the logic, the timing, everything that went into this portal decision. One, why do most guys leave? Most guys leave for one of two reasons. The first one, they just ain't playing that much. Well, you can't say a kid that had 271 yards rushing, or 270 carries this year, by far the most on a team, on a 10-win team. You can't say it's about role. Lane Kiffin feeds him the ball, and he delivers for Lane Kiffin, okay? Two, you can't say the team's not good. We just expressed it here a moment ago. There's no major changes, so you look at the players who enter the portal. Either their role was going to be diminished, like a Kyle McCord at Ohio State, a Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma, or you're not getting any playing time like all the guys that entered from Alabama over the last couple of days, whatever. There are teams and there are players that have left because their teams are struggling. All the guys at Florida, or there's been a coaching change, Texas A&M, whatever. None of that applies for Quinshon Judkins. Beyond that, let me ask you a simple question. If this kid really had no interest in playing at Ole Miss, why did he wait a month to enter the portal? More importantly, why did he play in the bowl game? You're a running back. We all know body blows, touches, carries, hits. You're trying to avoid them if you're a star. So if he wasn't happy, if he didn't want to be there, this is a move that you would have made a month ago. You don't wait until January 4th and play in a bowl game. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. And the only thing I can think of is it's not only NIL, but it's a very specific situation in Ole Miss. Because think about, what has the headline been at Ole Miss this offseason? Outside of obviously winning the Peach Bowl and winning 11 games for the first time in school history. It is that you guys killed in the transfer portal. Specifically, defensive lineman Walter Nolan from Texas A&M, Tyler Barron from Tennessee. The kid from Florida was their best edge player there. 11.5 TFLs, I believe, was the stat. 8.5, 7.5 sacks, something like that. So you have killed in the portal. We all know the portal is a business game, is a numbers game, and we know those players aren't coming very cheap, okay? And so when I see Quinshon Judkins wait until now, what this says to me is that he probably played for a certain number, a certain price tag this year in NIL, and he came back to campus maybe after winter break, after Christmas break, after finals, and he started hearing whispers about this guy made that much and that guy made that much and this portal kid made that much and this kid did this and this kid did that. And by the way, I'm not blaming the kids. Somebody offers you money and it's good. Take the money. But my guess is Quinshon Judkins heard all this and said, you know what? Put his agent to work and said, get me a new deal. As a matter of fact, it was very interesting. As soon as this news came out, I basically put that out on Twitter. And I actually heard from 2 or 3 people that basically said the same, as this reeks of NIL. I thought this was very interesting from Shannon Terry, who runs On3. He's the founder of On3, president of On3, whatever. Here is what he tweeted. Found this very, very, very interesting. He said, quote, and remember, On3 is the network that does the valuation, right? They do the NIL valuation, how much your NIL is worth based on your reach, based on your success, based on your this, based on your that. Here is what Shannon Terry said. Shannon Terry said, Judkins has an On3 NIL valuation of $535K, $535,000. I suspect he is asking for 2 to 3 times his value. Even in this climate, it's hard to see a running back command $1 million deal. Decisions for all of those involved. And so listen, I think Torres is barking up the right tree with this NIL stuff because, you know, keep in mind, On3, I think, has been a leader in the NIL space. They host NIL symposiums. They talk to all these players, all these recruits, all this whatever. They're probably as plugged into the NIL space and what is going on there as any outlet in college sports. So when the CEO says, this is your valuation, you're probably asking for 2 to 3 times this much, that's interesting. It's also interesting because I had other people reach out and say the same thing. He's a running back. This might be no different than the NFL. What Saquon Barkley went through last summer, he's probably going through it as well. He's probably sitting there saying, you're offering all these transfers this much money and you're only offering me this? What the heck? But then Ole Miss is like, we can't pay you X. You're a running back. We'll pay you Y. We can't pay you X. So I just think this is very interesting. This to me feels like a negotiating play. Now, if you're an Ole Miss fan, I'll add this. And I think this is very important. Everybody's sitting there saying, well, I mean, he entered the transfer portal. As of about 7 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern time, he has not entered the portal. He's just announced he's leaving. This to me feels very, very, very much like he doesn't want to leave, but he's putting his agents to work. He's going to squeeze every last dollar out of Ole Miss. And again, I hate to say it, but it is probably the right decision on his part. Get that money, man. You were the star of an 11-win team. These other guys coming in, they don't get the whatever. You get the point. I just think it's worth noting. Really quickly, a couple other notes from the portal. Nick Scourton, really good player. Nick Scourton is from played at Purdue. He actually led the Big Ten, in sacks this past season. He is a monster on the defensive front. 15 TFLs, 10 sacks this year for Purdue. He announced he's going to Texas A&M. So this is not totally a surprise. Nick Scourton is from right around Texas A&M, and he has entered the portal, and now he has committed to Texas A&M. I'll say this for Mike Elko. So the first couple days, it was tough because there was a lot of hemorrhaging of players as Mike Elko, the transition happened. But as time has gone on, as things have gotten more settled, I like more and more what Mike Elko is doing. I think he's slowly starting to bring in his guys. Listen, Walter Nolan's incredible. Evan Stewart's incredible. I'm not saying they're not. But I wonder, all those players that left, how upset Mike Elko was with some of them leaving and being able to bring in his own guys. Elko has quietly listened. Texas A&M, because of that recruiting class, there's so many high profile players that you just sit there and you say like, oh my goodness, this is all bad news. This is all bad news. I don't really know that that's the case. And I think Mike Elko is slowly starting to bring in some of his guys that he wants out of the portal. Added a couple nice pieces late in the high school ranks. You add in, on top of that, you add in the cornerback from Kansas State, Will Lee. There's been a couple other pieces since then. I think Mike Elko's slowly starting to do a very good job. A couple very interesting pieces to his coaching staff as well. Tommy Moffitt, who I think I might have discussed on this show, but the strength and conditioning coach, legendary strength and conditioning coach. I know Coach Moffitt a little bit well. I know him a little bit, I think he's going to do wonders for that program. He will bring a toughness and a meanness to that group. He was at LSU for the Saban, Les Miles, and Orgeron eras. He's got 3 national championship rings on his finger. Also, they just hired the wide receivers coach from Bama. So good week for Mike Elko. Other portal news, thought this was interesting. Malachi Nelson, the former 5-star in the class of 2023, played at USC this year. And he is apparently visiting Boise State. Listen, we criticize Lincoln Riley for a lot, but this confirms what I told you when he entered the portal. It feels very obvious to me. He was the 5-star, 2 classes behind Caleb Williams. So you think, oh, he's going to sit out for a year and then take over for Caleb Williams. As soon as Lincoln Riley started recruiting the portal for quarterbacks, I said, this guy ain't the long-term answer. So no disrespect, but it sounds like Boise could be a spot for him. Speaking of portal quarterbacks, interesting shakeup this week. DJU committed to Florida State. I think I might have talked about that on Monday's show. Well, I talked about it at some point. I think he's fine. I don't think he's anything special. Whatever. Will Howard is now the quarterback of choice at Ohio State. That's interesting to me. That's very interesting. You know what I think that is? I think it's Ryan Day trying to move the news cycle forward. That's what I honestly think. If Will Howard from Kansas State, who basically got shoved out the door because they believe their freshman Avery Johnson is better, if that's your answer at Ohio State, you're screwed. You're just screwed. We're going to talk about preseason too early top 25 for next year. If Will Howard is your answer at quarterback, I'm sorry. You're not better than Oregon. Probably not better than Washington. Michigan, we'll see what happens with Jim Harbaugh. It's like, what is Ohio State doing? How is Will Howard the best option? But he's supposed to visit this week. So a lot of portal comings and goings. We'll keep you updated on all that.